Well, can your state be completely self-sufficient in energy? A new report out suggests that at least half the states in the U.S. could achieve energy independence with the help of locally focused federal energy policy. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance is hoping the report makes its way into the energy policy of President-elect Barack Obama. They argue federal energy policy supports centralized renewable power and major investment in a nationwide transmission infrastructure, and they call that regrettable since homegrown renewable energy, they say, is cheaper. Now, from CBS's WCCO in Minneapolis is David Morris. He is Vice President of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. David, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Now, your report is suggesting at least half of the states in the U.S. could achieve energy independence with this local focus. Tell us how can that be?
Well, our report focused on wind energy resources within the state borders and solar energy resources that are just rooftop solar cells. And then we took the two individually, state by state, and we took the two combined. So it was a conservative estimate in the sense that we didn't look at solar outside of rooftops, and what we found was that half of the states could be not energy self-reliant, energy self-sufficient. And it's our feeling that since renewable energy, unlike coal and oil and fossil fuels and uranium, renewable energy falls everywhere. And it can be harvested or harnessed most effectively near where it's going to be used. Based on our analysis, the federal government should really encourage decentralized energy generation, and in combination or in partnership with the states, should look to make maximum use of in-state resources before they think of states importing their energy from another state or another country.
So, I mean, you have this state-by-state analysis, but aren't there some areas that simply cannot be self-reliant all year round? I mean, think about Nome in January, for example. Don't communities need the grid for at least some backups some of the time?
Yes, we're not talking about getting rid of the grid. What we're talking about is miniaturizing the grid. And so, certainly Northern California can trade electricity with Southern California. Different parts of Minnesota can trade electricity with other parts. There are windier parts. There are less windy parts. But this is a state-by-state analysis. And we were very surprised, for example, in New England, to find that there were very significant electricity generation resources internal to their state borders. What makes this important, I think, is that what I'm sensing out of Washington, D.C. with the new administration is that one of their highest priorities is going to be centralized solar. In fact, Al Gore in today's New York Times had an op-ed in which he said his highest priority would be centralized solar, and his second highest priority would be building a national high-voltage transmission system to get that centralized solar electricity out of those states in which it's generated to states very far away. And my feeling is that we may need centralized solar at some future time, but the first order of priority should be to make the best use of our existing grid system and our existing renewable resources.
Well, what do you say to companies, or what do you say to people like the wind industry lobbying for this massive federal build-out of transmission that they can hook into?
Well, I say that they should read the report that's going to come out next week from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which is a report based on utility data, utility modeling data of the existing electricity transmission system in Minnesota. And what this utility data indicates is that Minnesota can reach its 25% renewable electricity goal. That's a state mandate, without building any new high-voltage transmission lines. That is, there's a lot of capacity in the existing transmission system, and we should use that capacity, which of course makes the transmission system a lot more efficient, before we build these massive new high-voltage transmission lines. And another reason for doing that is that we don't know where the technological dynamic is going to go. Wind turbines can get a lot more energy per square foot of blade diameter now than they could 10 or 15 years ago. We're talking about introducing electrified cars and electric cars, which means we could have a great deal of storage capacity in our driveways and our garages. And if we have storage capacity, then we really might begin to think about miniaturizing the electric system even more, because intermittent electricity could be generated when the wind blows and the sun shines, and then could be put in your car storage system. So it seems to me that we're jumping the gun here by saying that as a first order of priority, we should build 10,000 miles and invest $400 billion into building a national, more of a national grid system.
So what kind of federal incentives are needed to achieve your vision of this self-reliance?
Well, I think that there's a number of different federal incentives, but I think that the principal one is that the federal government should stop trying to preempt the authority of states to site transmission lines. Just today in California, a draft order of the Public Utility Commission denied the application for a utility company to build an in-state high-voltage transmission line to transport renewable electricity because they said you don't need that right now to meet the 20% electricity mandate. Now, if that were an interstate transmission line, it comes under federal authority. And the federal government, aided and abetted by Congress, this has been a bipartisan decision, is now beginning to preempt state authority over transmission lines. It is beginning to designate national emergency corridors, that is, corridors for transmission lines that the federal government thinks is so important for them to be cited that they can overrule states. So the first step, it seems to me, in the medical principle, is to do no harm.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were an energy advisor in several administrations, agencies of President Ford, Carter, Clinton, and George W. Bush. Tell me about influencing Senator Obama's energy policy. What's the best way to get him to, I mean, he will have the power to encourage or discourage this decentralized renewable concept.
Yes, and that was one reason why we did the report. I mean, from everybody's sense, and I haven't talked to Senator Obama, but I have talked to his principal energy advisors on this during the campaign and most recently. From all reports, he believes in listening. He's a very good listener. He makes up his mind on the basis of facts. And so what we're trying to do is to present him with facts. We also think that there are things that the federal government can do rather than just not doing something. For example, he should issue an executive order, an immediate executive order, that all existing and new federal buildings be carbon neutral. And what that would do is to begin to promote a decentralized energy picture based on existing federal buildings while also beginning to move us toward his climate change goals. So I think that the best way to get to Senator Obama is to present him with a reasoned case. And then, of course, you have to get him to read the reasons case, which is always difficult for a president, especially an incoming president. But we think that, if we can get sufficient visibility from this program and other programs to the empirical data that we're presenting, that we'll be able to present that case.
All right. We will watch to see where this report goes. David Morris, Institute for Local Self-Reliance, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.